and welcome, 2D Gamer back again, and today I thought I'd go over a very specific interview of the January 2000 issue of PSM, or PlayStation Magazine, a 100% independent PlayStation magazine. But first and foremost, I have to warn you that this is not an actual football game on TV I am watching. This incredible lifelike presentation and graphics is Madden 2001, the most advanced football game of its time. It's actually pretty amazing when you look at the presentation in this game compared to the older games. This really was like next gen and mind-blowing for its time, even though it's, it's just Madden. But so, anyway, at this point in gaming history, we already knew what the PlayStation 2 was going to look like. This one, not this one. This one was still, 5 years off, I believe? What was it, 2005 or 2004 when the Slim came to be? But that's the one running Madden right now. But, so we knew what the PS2 was going to look like. This was still 10, almost 11 months. Actually, this would have been, since it's January 2000, this would have been December 99 that this issue hit the shelves. So 10, 11 months almost, give or take, from the time that the PS2 was going to launch in America. Oh, you see my unsightly mug ring on my completely free computer desk. In fact, all the furniture in my apartment is 100% free. I paid free $99 for it, so can't complain, even though it looks ugly. Anyways, so in this issue of PSM, it's actually pretty interesting. They had their Game of the Year list, like everyone else, in December. Have all your old advertisements. This one's for Thrasher, Skate and Destroy, which a lot of skateboarding purists really liked. Tomb Raider, The Last Revelation. Some of the games that were coming out at the time. PS2 2K feature. And I was looking to see if this was the swimsuit issue. It didn't seem to be. Battle Tanks, Global Assault. I love that on the N64. So, Sony's Millennium Surprise. Sega announces its first 3 games of Y2K. I don't think this is at the point that everyone knew that Sega was quitting and developing games for the PS2, or GameStop.com, Babbage's and software, etc. GameStop. There's Grandia. But let's see. So here's the hottest new PS2 news coming out, and then here's some PS2 eye candy for you. It's actually pretty amazing how simplistic and it seems by today's standards, these screenshots, but at the time they were like mind-blowing. Even if you had a Dreamcast, the PS2 stuff still looked really good. Well, unless you were a Dreamcast fanboy and you swear to this day that the Dreamcast has better graphics. I just can do better. But, Tekken Tag, Munch's Odyssey, the interesting game that never released on the PS2 because Oddworld inhabitants got tired of the difficulties involved with the PS2 development, and they went to the Xbox instead. That's why Munch's Odyssey was a launch game for the Xbox and never saw the light of day on the PS2. I guess part of the problem was PS2 development with the system is it didn't do anything in hardware for each developer. So it couldn't do, you could get all sorts of texture mapping and bump mapping out of the system, but you had to pre-program it yourself. Whereas the Gamecube and Xbox had things that the hardware would do for developers, so they didn't actually have to program each individual step. So the PS2 was more like a blank slate system. They're like, here's our system, here's the specs, do what you can. So pretty much I think that's also why the Renderware engine was such a popular engine to use in the day, because instead of spending all the time on R&D and trying to push the system and get a working graphical engine, it was easier just to license the engine from crap. Who was the company behind Renderware? Off the top of my head, I do not remember. Crap. They did the Burnout series. They did all sorts of things. Oh, I'll remember eventually, probably. So here's the Tokyo Flash. All the cool things going on in Tokyo. So this was even before the PS2 launched in Japan. ESPN International Track and Field. Let's see, South Park. Formula 1 99. triumphant racing simulation, and an F1 fan's wet dream. Wow. So you could get PSM for only $1 an issue. It was actually probably the cheapest magazine to subscribe to at the time. MTV Music Generator, they gave a 5. It's kind of like the Magic Music Maker thing that I used to make both my intro music and any songs I use anymore because the YouTube copyright hounds. NBA Live 2000, Track and Field, blah blah. Die Hard Trilogy 2. Killer Loop, which is a Wipeout rip-off. Dang it. A stupid thing. Anyways, let's see if there's anything interesting that they reviewed here. Resident Evil 3 advertisement right there. Army Men Air Attack. Nothing truly of note. Boombots right here. And then NBA Showtime on NBC. Basically, they gave it a 2 because it was basically just like NBA Jam, which in my book isn't a bad thing. Sorry. I'm pretty sure. Oh, Pong, the new Pong. Is that the... I think I bought this one recently. It's the one where the little Pong chips are like... and they're talking. It's actually like overly cute, but it's actually a pretty fun game. ActionAce.com. She's the dragon lady, and she's after you. ActionAce.com. I wonder if that website's still around. Tomorrow Never Dies. 2.5. Twisted Metal 4. 2.5. I actually need to give the post single track Twisted Metals a better try, but first I'll take a sidetrack before I get to the interview with PSM's top 10 1999 games. Top 10 games of 99. So number 10 is FIFA 2000. Okay. So yeah, FIFA 2000. Number 9 is Final Fantasy 8. Again, I love the PSM artwork. They always got the like real comic book artists to do their artwork and stuff. But then there's Driver is coming in at number 8. Medal of Honor at number 7. Gran Turismo 2 at number 6. Resident Evil 3 at number 5. Ridge Racer R4, Ridge Racer Type 4, number 4. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater at number 3. Dino Crisis at number 2. I guess they really like Dino Crisis. And are you ready for number 1? Some of you are going to be like, what? But this is a PlayStation magazine, so go figure. Number 1, Ape Escape. PSM really loved Ape Escape. And, you know, actually, it's a really fun game. Especially with the cool little dual analog control setup there. Oh, look, Yu-Gi-Oh! Direct.com. I wonder if that website's still around. Anyway, so... Oh, look, there's a strategy guide for Tomorrow Never Dies. So you run through, shoot everyone, and then just shoot everyone. And then once you're done shooting everyone, more people will respawn out of the thin air, and you shoot them. So, yeah. Demolition Racer. It's a game I've been meaning to get my hands on eventually. Here's the cheat codes. Tip lines, eh? Lunar. Silver Star Story complete. Alright. So, reading about the PS2 in your October issue, I started to wonder about the PS2 and modern related issues. I came up with some questions that I'm hoping you can answer. What I think PS fans would really want besides being able to play online is the ability to exchange memory card saves and scores. And plans are being made for the PS2 to have these capabilities. Now, would it be possible for the PS2 to get viruses if they had an online service? No. No one really cared to give the PS2 a virus. Now, crashing PSN later, that's a little different story. Is Sony going to create its own service for the PS2, or will it work with any other online companies, i.e. AOL or Hotmail? Sony didn't create their own service. You could use for the few dial-up games, yes, like AOL or something like that. For online, it just depended. Some games used GameSpy. Actually, a lot of the games used GameSpy on the PS2's online. But that wasn't for When did the online really start? When did SOCOM come out? Because I know there was Tribes and there were this is Madden of course on online and all that stuff, but I forget. Pretty much SOCOM was the game to get on PS2 online. So the pause topic of this issue is, what do you see in the year 2000? Sorry, year 2000. But here's feedback from the November issue. PS2, what do you really think? So this they'd ask the readers, and the readers would send in responses, and they'd choose the responses. My first impression of the PS2 was, hey, that looks like that state-of-the-art CD player my father bought back in 1986. What was Sony thinking? Okay, so the thing can play DVD movies, and this is a definite plus. But what hurts the new system more than anything has to be the lack of 4 controller ports, which I agreed with. At the time, I thought it sucked that the PS2 only had 2 controller ports, but, I mean, system didn't stop the system from selling. Why did Sony not follow the crowd on this one? Enough complaints, though. In my opinion, it's the games that count, and it looks like Sony's got them. Wait, one more thing. What about that price? $300? That has to go. That's actually not too bad in hindsight of the PS3. Let's see. There's more, but... Oh, here we go. The first thing that surprised me about the new PS2 was that it was black. I mean, it's just such a dreary color. You can be sitting there happy playing a game and look over at the system and it looks like coal black death. Kind of depressing. I'm also disappointed that there is no modem. I'm sure that once Sega gets their network up, the DC's gonna be a blast. But I also think that the DVD ability may even things out. Sonic 62. That's something Sonic. Oh, that's a Sega fanboy. Just kidding. Anyways, so assuming my reading ability is good, I'm going to delve into the actual interview just to get you a mindset of where both the gaming media and the game makers were in the year 2000. Sorry, stinking Conan O'Brien and ruining the words year 2000 for everyone who's ever watched that skit. So, the people they're asking the questions to, Electronic Arts, Pat Becker, Director of Corporate Communications, Mike Fisher, Director of Marketing at Namco of America, Kelly Flock, President of 989 Studios, Bill Gardner, President of Capcom Entertainment, Activision Studios, Mitch Lasky, Executive Vice President, Yoshi Mariyama, Square EA Vice Chairman, and THQ Michael Rubinelli, VP of Development. So, PSM asked specific questions, and each one of these people answered to the best of, I don't know. Basically, they just probably sent out a bunch of questions and got their answers in so they could put them in the magazine. So, with no further ado, let's get into this interview. Let's see how my reading skills are. And there's Abe again. The odd and funny thing is that Abe would not appear back on a PlayStation console until they released... Did they release Munch's Odyssey on PSN? That's my question. I'm actually not sure. Because the last game until then would have been Abe's Exodus. And that would have been the last time you saw Abe on a Sony system. Because there was a bit of a falling out, of course. And then Raziel and Jin Kazuma. And, you know, that chick from Dino Crisis and Ryu. But before I get started, since one of the commentators or one of the interviewees in this interview is from 989 Studios, I thought I'd show some footage of Game Day 2001. Now, this game was so buggy. Sorry. So buggy when it was released. This was a game that they should have done a Madden 96 with. If you remember correctly, Madden 96 on the PlayStation was canceled because it wasn't coming along just right. Game Day 2001, in comparison to Madden 2001, this is pretty much where Game Day started really just kind of fell down into the nothingness of gaming. At one time, if you remember on the PS1, it was Game Day versus Madden every year. Game Day upshowed Madden all the time. Look at that. But this game is definitely, this was not fully developed yet whenever they released it, and they probably should have just canned it for another year and saved face of this entire franchise. Now, Game Day eventually, I think, did get better eventually before EA bought the NFL license, but at this point in time, this was a huge mistake, and just pretty much just, they shouldn't have released this. But it's kind of funny just looking back and seeing the mistakes of gaming past. But anyway, no further ado, let's get into the interview, assuming I know how to read. Folks, we're at a crossroads. Not only are we headed towards a whole new millennium, but it's also the year that we make that big jump to the next generation of video gaming. Sega served up a pretty tasty appetizer last September with Dreamcast, and this year Sony will bring the main course, the follow-up to the most successful game console of all time. But where does this leave the original PlayStation? And where do Nintendo and Microsoft fit into the equation? To find out the answers to these questions, we went straight to the source, the game makers themselves. We put together a list of the most important questions facing us in the year ahead, and the answers we got back revealed quite a lot. Over the next few pages, our panel of experts discuss many topics, such as who will win the next-gen wars, who will have PS2 titles at launch, and where the good old PS1 fits into all of this. These guys don't work for Sony, they tell it like they see it. Wait, I thought 989 Studios was actually owned by Sony. Or eventually owned by Sony. Anyways, they tell it like they see it. So let's get going, shall we? It's Y2K, and it's time we kick things into overdrive. These guys represent the majority of the big third-party software publishers who would know better than we where the industry is heading. They are as listed in alphabetical order, and I already went through these people. 989 Studios, Kelly Flock, Activision, Mitch Lasky, Bill Gardner, Pat Becker, Mike Fisher, Yoshi Maruyama, Square EA, and then Mike Rubinelli, VP of Development for THQ. So the first question. Where do you see the PlayStation in the year 2000? What challenges does it face? First up is 989 Studios. The PlayStation will continue to build upon its position as the most successful console in history and the first console ever to achieve the #1 position in all 3 major territories of Japan, North America, and Europe. The challenges are obvious. Can Sony and their extensive third-party partners continue to deliver software which pushes the envelope both technically and creatively? At 989 Studios and 989 Sports, we believe there is still opportunity for innovation and technology breakthroughs with the original PlayStation, and we think games like Siphon Filter and some others not yet announced will demonstrate the vitality of the frontline PlayStation software market. Our biggest challenge is to keep producing great games for the PlayStation while we simultaneously develop for the PlayStation 2. Activision. In 2000, the PlayStation will reach its peak as a mass market gaming platform. It will show its age technologically, but development teams are also capable of squeezing considerably more out of the box than they could 5 years ago, as with any good system. Capcom. The market will begin to get soft. There is an element of planned obsolescence. There will still be good sales, but the big titles will start to suffer due to the large production costs involved. Keeping production and distribution costs low will be the biggest challenge. So thank you, Capcom, for actually not answering the question they asked you, but bringing up another thing about production costs. Even in the year 2000, they were worried about how much it cost to develop games, and this would skyrocket in the coming generations of gaming, especially with the PS3 and Xbox 360 in particular, but also on the PS2, Xbox, and Gamecube. It was expensive to develop for, and it's all the more expensive nowadays. But so here's EA. By the end of 2000, there will probably be more than 70 million units in homes worldwide. So there is a significant installed base still hungry for PlayStation software. Namco. The PlayStation is now boldly going where no console has gone before. Sony has grown its platform from an expensive plaything for the hardcore gamer to the de facto standard system for all gamers. By the time this article is published, there will be a PlayStation in 1 out of every 4 households in America. The challenge will be satisfying these 25 plus million PlayStation owners and even higher number of PlayStation players, as Sony makes the transition to the PlayStation 2. Can Sony ensure that PlayStation continues to represent a consistent set of quality, values, and attitudes during this transition? Only time will tell, but I'm very confident that they can pull it off. Sorry, I'm standing over this thing and my nose is running. Square. PlayStation software business will be very strong throughout the year 2000. This particularly due taught he fact. I do that all the time, actually. Whenever I'm saying to the, I always hit taught he for some reason. I hit the space after I hit a T. Anyway, back to the interview. The PlayStation software business will be very strong throughout the year 2000. This particularly due to the fact that the PS2 system will be backwards compatible. THQ. We see the PlayStation as a very steady performer in the year 2000. You will see some of the hardcore gamers gravitate exclusively to the next generation hardware platforms, and the average age of the PlayStation consumer will probably drop slightly. In the end, there will still be some great games shipping with new technology available as engineers really figure out how to hit the sweet spot of the hardware. So, I guess that's kind of why near the end of the PlayStation 1's life you saw a lot of kids type games. You saw Disney platformers, 102 Dalmatians, Aladdin, Sheep Raider was cool. But so I'm guessing they suspected that a lot of the older gamers were going to buy a PS2, a Dreamcast, Gamecube, Xbox, while a lot of the younger gamers were going to stick around with the PlayStation 2 as like a hand-me-down from their older brother or something. So number 2, what are the biggest challenges to video gaming as a whole? 989 Studios. The biggest challenge is to avoid the historical pitfalls associated with the transition years between 2 generations of consoles. Going forward, the very best games are going to succeed, and over the next year, there will increasingly be fewer titles dominating the market. Historically, publishers have been slow to shift their development resources into new platforms. Inventory needs to be tightly managed. We don't know when the shift will occur between the current and next-gen platforms, but when it does, the challenge is not only to recognize it for what it is, but also to act quickly. It's a time for tough decisions. Being good won't be enough on its own. We all need a little bit of luck, too. Okay. Activision. Sorry. Activision. Our biggest challenge is to figure out how to broaden the market for interactive entertainment and to continue the trend of increasing the current install base with the introduction of new console systems. Capcom. From a business standpoint, it will be getting through the transition from the old platform to the new. From a development standpoint, keeping cost under control while still developing cutting-edge product will be the biggest challenge. So, even at this point, Capcom was worried about the cost of development. Again, this was almost 20 years ago, too. EA. Piracy. From both packaged goods and internet piracy is the industry's #1 challenge. It cost U.S. publishers more than $3.2 billion a year in lost sales. Potentially lost sales, I'd say. some people who pirate actually aren't going to buy the actual game. Okay, so Namco. I think the biggest challenge that video gaming faces will be adjusting to its new role as a mainstream media. 1999 saw many shocking and often untrue allegations made about video games in the press and in Washington, D.C. The world is finally waking up to the fact that video games are a major force in our society and our economy. It reminds me a lot of the history of rock and roll. Rock music had a small hardcore fan base during its early evolution, but when it finally broke into the mainstream of youth culture, it was viewed as everything from a communist conspiracy to a public health threat, and even a tool of the devil. As video gaming grows and matures, it will go through the same cycles. We finally have a president who listens to rock music, and he doesn't inhale. And I'm looking forward to the day when we can have a president who plays video games. Still coming, I'm sure. Square. As hardware moves up to the next generation 128-bit era, we were still talking bits at this time, guys. Moves up to the next generation 128-bit era, the cost of developing a high quality game will surely go up. To save costs, publishers will be tempted to make more sequels or variations from previously successful titles in hopes that this will ensure future success. The industry will continue to be very consolidated to a point where only publishers concentrating on successful titles will survive. I think that's almost prophetic right there. I mean, you got pretty much a lot of the big developers did go out. That's why you have a lot of developers that are focusing on the games they have that sold. That's why you have a new Call of Duty every year, like a new John Madden. So is John Madden the football version of Call of Duty, or is Call of Duty the first-person shooter version of Madden? That's the question nowadays. Just kidding. I think video gaming in general has to start to innovate beyond the proven game designs in the past and figure out how to enhance the interactive experience. It will be really easy to take the PS2 hardware, as an example, and say, hey, let's just make it prettier and let's make it run faster. In the end, I do not think that these are the games that will transcend gaming as we know it today. Now that companies have all of this processing power and a high level of connectivity at their fingertips, the groups that think outside the box in terms of crafting new and different experiences will be perceived as the market leaders. Yes and no, I guess. I'm pretty sure what Square was saying is those are the ones that survived, the ones that just push their one-trick pony franchises into the ground because that's what sold. Unfortunately, as much as I wish the THQ guy was right here, that the innovative developers were going to be the market leaders or perceived market leaders, in the end we just got, basically, companies have just been playing it safe. Okay, so the next question. How will PlayStation 2 impact the market this year? Will it trounce the competition instantly? How many years does the PS1 have left? Probably about 4, I think, from this point. Trying to think. The PS1 still went strong pretty far into the PS2's life. Pretty strong. So, 989 Studios. I believe there are two primary market segments, the early adopter and the mass market. I do not know how quickly PlayStation 2 will attempt to reach both market segments, and that strategy alone will determine its market impact. We need to know launch date, price point, and available inventory to be able to gauge the impact. I believe PlayStation 2 is going to dominate the market, but I don't know when. I do think that as soon as the console launches in Japan, a lot of traditional assumptions about video games are going to be challenged. I expect the launch to be extremely successful, both in Japan and later in the US and in Europe. Assuming they had enough consoles at launch, which they didn't, but hey. I don't know what the impact of this launch will have on the competition since Dreamcast came out so much earlier than the PS2, it's difficult to see them as truly competitive. Technically, there's no comparison. Dreamcast falls somewhere between the two PlayStations, and it's hard to see it as true competition for either. Sorry, Dreamcast fanboys. He was right, kind of. I mean, graphically, Dreamcast still looks great, but still. The first PlayStation should continue to be a viable platform for at least another 3 years for key franchises, licenses, and great new games. Although I don't know how much a full price line it can support. Activision. I think the PS2 will have the most successful launch of any console platform in history. However, it will still take several years to reach the installed base of the current PlayStation 1. Will there still be life in the PS1? Sure. Look at the continued sales of 16-bit software 5 years after the introduction of the 32-bit consoles. Depending on which console you're talking about, but hey. Capcom. The answer is unknown because we haven't seen pricing or completed games for the PS2. If it's everything they say it is, then it will cause some huge ripples in the market. The price point will be key to the success of the system. The PS2 must do all that they say it can do and do it well. It's impossible to tell how many years the PS1 has left. If the cost of production goes down, it could be around a long time. This will depend on how Sony handles the next stage and if they adapt the business model appropriately. EA. The system will be ramping up, but we think that this revolutionary engine holds great promise. None of the new systems will trounce the competition instantly because there will still be a huge installed base of original PlayStations and N64s. The fact that the PS2 is backwards compatible will help cushion this transition. How many years does PS1 have left? Probably another couple of years, at least from the software perspective. Yeah, I mean, 2003, 2004, I think. I'm trying to remember when the last game day was. Was it 2004 or 2005? That would be kind of absurd when you think about it. How many, like the last PS1 game was only a couple years from the PS3 launch and well into the PS2's life. But then again, it was kind of the same with the PS2. So, Namco. If the PlayStation 2 carries a US price close to the price it will carry at launch in Japan, it won't spell the overnight death of any competition, even with cool features like a DVD movie capability and internet access. But over time the price will fall, new killer applications will be developed, and the PS2 market share will grow as trade up to this awesome new system. As for the PS1, I wouldn't count it out anytime soon. After all, Namco still does good business from our 16 products. Let's hear it from Miss Pac-Man, still #1 on the Super NES. It's going to be a while before the PS2 reaches an installed base anywhere close to the PS1, and until then, there is still going to be a big market for high-quality PS1 games. Square. Already in Japan, the video game business for the existing 32-bit and 64-bit consoles has been dormant for some time, with people waiting for PS2 to be launched there next March. Sales of current systems have slowed immensely. I believe the game business between Japan and US is significantly different in the US. People will keep purchasing and playing PS games long after the launch of the PS2. Which is true. So, THQ. We think the PS2 will have a very successful launch, but vary in degrees depending upon several factors. If you look at this Dreamcast sales across the globe, I think it is very interesting that the exact same hardware got the exact same opposite response in the US and Europe as it did in Japan. Some people will point to Sega's brand image and leftover baggage from the Saturn in Japan, but they had the exact same hurdles everywhere else too. So what is the difference? Software. The launch titles in the US were 16 in total, but in reality, only 6 or so were worth buying. In Japan, they launched with 4 titles, none of which were compelling and really got off on the wrong foot. Retail can have a short memory. In the US, Sega showed them solid software at an aggressive price point, backed by some very good titles, coupled with a sizable marketing spend. Sorry, this guy's long-winded. Coupled with a sizable marketing spend, and the result was the most successful video game hardware launch in the history of the industry. Yeah, let's not forget that the Dreamcast actually had an amazing launch, and at the time, yes, was the most successful. What was it? Supposedly $80 million they made, or something like that. I don't remember, but it did really good for Sega. We know Sony will spend behind their hardware, but how many strong titles will be available at launch? By comparison to the Dreamcast, not nearly as many. Dreamcast launch was definitely one of the best in history as far as the great games that it had right available. Games like Soul Calibur, games, it had a really good launch. How many strong titles will be available at launch? I also did not think anyone in the retail community expects them to launch around the $350 price tag that is target for the Japanese launch. The final price plus a number of number of A titles, that's right. No one used the term AAA at this point, so the number of A titles will be the ultimate determining factor as to whether they hit a double or grand slam. I will not trounce the competition It will not trounce the competition instantly, but it certainly has everyone scrambling to determine their prospective levels of support for all known proposed platforms. I cannot speak for our competitors, but one thing we have done with a high degree of success is support hardware platforms after most people have long abandoned them. We know that what content works in all phases of a hardware's life cycle, so that gives us the confidence to continue our development efforts. Yeah, this THQ guy has a lot to say. As the platforms mature, I know we are going to support the PlayStation fairly aggressively in 2000, and will continue to support it in the years to come. Whew! That guy had a ton to say. Look, guys, Jiggle Physics. Dead or Alive Hardcore, PS2 launch game. At least in North America. Alright. Next question. Might we see any PS2 products from you this year, possibly at launch? 989. Yes, we might. No question that it is a huge task to develop games for new platforms on such short schedules. But we're optimistic that we'll be very competitive on PS2, on the PlayStation 2. Again, 989, you should have delayed Game Day 2001. It was just a mess. Pretty much Game Day 2001 pretty much killed the Game Day franchise as far as being a viable franchise. Luckily later it was, the 2K series versus Madden, but for the PS1, that Game Day versus Madden yearly competition was actually like one of those cool competitive things in gaming history. Alright, EA. Our objective is to have 8 to 10 titles on or around the launch of the PS2. I'm pretty sure they had that many. See, Madden, FIFA, NASCAR, SSX, X Squad. That was it, yeah. And probably some I've forgotten about. So they're pretty close, yeah. Capcom. This is a definite possibility. We've got several titles under development, but that's all I can say at this point. So what did Capcom have at launch? Didn't they just have Street Fighter EX? Looking through my launch games right here. I think that's all they had was EX3. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that Capcom only had Street Fighter EX3 at launch, unless there's one I'm forgetting. But this is pretty much, at least as the North American launch. I don't even know if they had this for the Japanese launch, because obviously I am not Japanese. Okay, so Namco. Anyone who knows their game history knows that much of the PlayStation success was built on the strength of Namco games, and we take a lot of pride in that history. Namco has already announced 2 games that will be available at the launch for the PS2 in Japan. Available for the launch of the PS2 in Japan. Tekken Tag Tournament and Ridge Racer 5. We haven't announced our lineup yet for the US, but you can be sure that when the PS2 is ready to come to these shores, Namco will be there. That's right, they also had MotoGP. What else did Namco have? They had Tekken Tag, MotoGP, and... Hold on. Going through my stack of launch games right now. So, Tekken Tag. Right. I need to get this more organized. Ridge Racer 5. And then MotoGP, which... Namco's launch games, right here for the US. They're available October 26, 2000. Or before. Ridge Racer. So that's what Namco had at launch. These 3 games, and anyway, I won't go through everyone's. Square. As you probably know, the Bouncer is currently being developed in Japan for the PS2. The Bouncer, one of the first, not flops for the PS2, but disappointing. Like, it got really bad reviews, but I like the Bouncer. I don't care. Screw you, gas. Anyways, we have not yet announced any of our US plans, but the game has already been shown at the Tokyo Game Show and has been reviewed as the best title currently in development for the PS2. That is until people got their hands on it and realized it was like a 4-hour, 2-hour playthrough, but you had to play through it multiple times. I still like the Bouncer. I don't care. THQ. The goal is to have software at launch or soon thereafter. So THQ published Summoner. What else did they have? Still going through... was that all they had at launch for THQ? Summoner? I swear they had more. No. There's something falling. There's Summoner in the reprint European case. But published by THQ, developed by Volition. I swear they had something else, but maybe they didn't. It was Rockstar and the Rainbow Studios, pretty much where Smuggler's Run. But at this time, Rockstar wasn't Rockstar, you know, it wasn't what it was today. Otherwise, they'd be here in the interviews, but no one saw Grand Theft Auto 3 coming. Let's see, how are we going? Boom! Jiggle physics. Anyway. Which system, PS1 or PS2, will your company focus more on in the year ahead? 989 Studios. We'll be shifting most of our focus onto the PS2 while continuing development of core titles for the PS1. Like, was it Siphon Filter 2 that came out in 2000 or 99? 99. But Siphon Filter 3, I think, came out 2000, 2001. And that was kind of like the last hurrah of like an A title for the PS1, or where someone put in a lot of time and money in development for PS1. So Siphon Filter 3 was kind of that last big PS1 release. And I really like that game too. Activision. For calendar 2000, we are still firm believers in the PS1, although the demographics of the market will change to include a younger, more mass-market consumer. Again, this is probably why we saw a bunch of those Disney games near the end of the PS1's life, the kiddie games. It's also why we saw a bunch of, well, the Simple 2000 blah 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 games converted to America for a $10 price tag. Capcom. We will focus on both. There is a 20 million PlayStation 1 US install base, and that number is nothing to shy away from. There is definitely still some money to be made and games to be played. We look forward to working with both the new and old hardware in the coming year. EA. We will still be creating... We will still be creating games for the large install base of the original PlayStation, and will more quickly bring our key franchises to the PS2 platform. Namco. The key to success is keeping a balance between the systems during this transition. As technology leaders in video gaming, Namco is always eager to push the limits of a breakthrough technology platform like PS2. At the same time, we are a company that still reaps great rewards from our classic games like Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man, Galaga, Galaxin, Dig Dug. We're in a unique position to understand the promise of the future while still valuing the strength of the past. Okay, so yes or no? Alright. Square will have a significant number of PS titles for the US next year, though development efforts have begun on the PS2. THQ, our main focus will be the PlayStation 1 in terms of total titles in development. Alright, next question. There's no jiggle physics on the screen. Wait, here we go. Jiggle physics. Missed. Wow, this computer is either really good or sucks as bad as I do at this game. Anyway, so what does your company have planned for 2000? We're stockpiling toilet paper and moving into the basement. This was still during the Y2K, well, scare? How many people remember Y2K? Namco. Our first product for 2000 will be Ace Combat 3. This is a game that shows how Namco is still pushing the PlayStation to new heights, no pun intended. Ace Combat 3 features sharper graphics than ever before, all new aircraft, and tons of new features. This is the type of game that will keep interest in PlayStation high, even as the big launch day approaches for PS2, or PlayStation 2. Capcom. Code Veronica is planned to come in March. This is for the Dreamcast, and it is expected to be a big one. I won't go into detail, but gamers can expect to be wowed. So, advertising the Dreamcast in a PlayStation Magazine, that's pretty gutsy, Capcom. Even though it eventually went to the PS2. Activision, we are currently working on Spider-Man, X-Men, you shouldn't have wasted your time on the X-Men games, but hey, Star Trek, Tenchu 2, well, you're publishing Tenchu 2, but you're not making it, right? And Alundra 2 for the PS1. Also, with the success of Tony Hawk, we are looking to increase our presence in the street sports genre. Yes, and eventually, remember how cool Tony Hawk was, and now no one even plays extreme sports games anymore? Or just almost nobody? EA, we won't discuss future plans. Thanks, EA. Square. Consumers will be happy to know that we have a wide variety of titles planned for the year 2000. In fact, a greater number of Squaresoft titles will be published in the US in 2000 than last year. In the first half of the year, we will see Chocobo's Dungeon 2. Instant classic. Final Fantasy 8 PC. I'm sure it sold very well on the PC. Saga Frontier 2. Vagrant Story, okay, that's a good one. Front Mission 3, good one. A part of the eagerly awaited Front Mission franchise, which I think started, on the Super Nintendo? None of the previous versions have yet to be published in the US. We've had a great number of requests to see the Front Mission titles in the US, and have decided to divulge our fans with the release of Front Mission 3. The year 2000 will bring our biggest year ever in terms of new franchises and teaming with new development teams. This spring, we'll release WWF SmackDown, developed by Yuke's. Wow, so the original SmackDown still hadn't even come out yet. Wow. It was that close to the PS2 launch. The year of the PS2 launch. Yuke's, as most people know, is arguably the best PS wrestling developer in the world. Arguably, yes. We also have Evil Dead from our new internal development group, Heavy Iron Studios, which incorporates some newer, never-before-seen technology for the PlayStation. We also have a solid original property called Summoner, THQ's first original role-playing game developed by Volition. However, we have not formally announced any Sony plans for that property just yet. It's going to be a PS2 launch game. We will also continue to expand upon our top-selling franchises such as Ricky Carmichael Motocross and our MTV Action Sports lines. Those sold? Okay. Our top-selling Rugrats game gets a brand new look that ties in with the theatrical release of the next Rugrats movie. Okay. Soon there will be some surprises announced with some big-name studios, so stay tuned! Alright, next question. If you had to guess what percentage of your efforts will be spent on PS1, PS2, Dreamcast, and N64? 989 Studios, PS1 35%, PS2 65%, Dreamcast 0%. Again, considering they were pretty much Sony owned or they're a second party developer, that makes sense. Activision. Activision is currently supporting the PS1, N64, and Dreamcast, but we are unable to discuss percentages at this time. Capcom. PS1, 35%, PS2, 25%, N64, 10%, Dreamcast, 30%. This includes development, sales, and marketing efforts as well. Okay, I had to take a little bit of a break there. My camera's battery died, and I had to go to work and go home and sleep and all that incredibly fun stuff. Also, just so you know, this is not an actual NHL game you are watching. This is NHL 2001, a PlayStation 2 launch game. It's so real. Okay, it's not Sammy Sosa High Heat Baseball. Alright, so back to EA on this question. Question is, if you had to guess what percentage of your efforts will be spent on the PS1, PS2, Dreamcast, and N64. So, to EA, our main focus at the moment is PC and PlayStation 1 because the number of machines and homes. We will bring games for the PS2 to mass market as fast as possible. As we have in the past, we will be developing a select number of our franchise titles for the N64. We continue to evaluate the opportunity on the Dreamcast. No, you didn't, because you never released anything for the Dreamcast, EA. While it has had a strong launch in the US, we also saw sales in Japan drop off fairly rapidly. The most important factor is going to be its staying power when the PS2 launches next year. Yes, I almost forgot that EA totally did not actually develop anything for the Dreamcast. But then again, that's what allowed 2K Sports to come up in NFL 2K and 2K Basketball, which is still around to this day. Not NFL 2K, but the basketball is. Namco. I don't want to bring it down to percentages. We are strong believers in both the technical power of the PS2 and Sony's ability to make it a success in the marketplace. But we also don't want to ignore video game players who've decided to purchase other game systems. PlayStation products, both 1 and 2, will remain central to Namco's software development strategy, but I think we have the capacity to let owners of other game consoles enjoy Namco games too. Like Soul Calibur on the Dreamcast launch, which is, I believe, the only game Namco released on the Dreamcast. Let's see, Square. In terms of development, it's been 100% PS, and it's going to be 100% PS2 starting shortly. Starting with the... I'm sure they released some games after the Bouncer, but then again, Square didn't develop the Bouncer. It was the guys who made Urguys and Tobal. What was it, Dream Factory, I think? THQ. I would say that our biggest push will be on PS1, followed by N64, then DC, then PS2. Again, that simply relates to the number of titles we intend to ship in the year 2000. Alright, next question. How do you see the console market shaping up over the next few years? Alright. 989 Studios. Bigger than ever. Just as PlayStation created the largest video game market ever, I believe PlayStation 2 will build on that success and create an even more mainstream, broad-based market. The console market is going to continue to astound everyone as it penetrates all strata of society on a global basis. Okay. Activision. I think it's going to be very competitive, and I think that the competition is good. Sony is the market leader. Nintendo is certainly not giving up on the set-top, and Dreamcast has performed much better than anyone expected. Capcom. We will go through a down period, and then the industry will come back stronger than ever. We must go through a down period during any console transition period to establish a strong install base. Okay. I'm pretty sure the Capcom guy should, run for political office. He's pretty, just, black and white vanilla answers right there. EA. I think there will be a much smoother transition to the next generation consoles this time around. If Sony can execute the development and launch of this console as well as they did on the original PlayStation, we think they have a terrific opportunity to dominate the hardware business in the next cycle. Yeah, he was right about that. At least as far as Sony dominating the PS2, dominating the Gamecube and Xbox. Nothing against the Gamecube or Xbox, but Namco. The great thing about this crazy games business is that no one can predict what will happen next. It was only 2 years ago that one other video game magazine, not PSM, crowned the PC the Game System of the Year. They saw constantly improving CPU performance and new technologies such as 3D accelerator cards as opening up a gateway for a new age in gaming. Well, I'm still waiting. And by the way, wasn't everyone supposed to be playing virtual reality games by now? Last time I checked, I didn't see too many people walking around with VR helmets and tactical feedback gloves. So who can say what the future holds? All I know is that the games keep getting better every year. There were a couple of VR helmets that were released at this time, but they weren't like PlayStation VR, which I actually haven't even played PlayStation VR because who cares? Okay, Square. I believe that PS2 has the best chance to be a dominant game console for the next generation hardware system. The system, which does not dominate Japanese market, will never win the global game business. Listen to this PS2 play this Blue Disc game. Can you hear it? CD-based games on the PS2. THQ. I see the market growing beyond the magical 10 billion mark in terms of sales, looking to surpass the size of the music biz. Seeing that gaming in its purest form is head-to-head or multiplayer component, I think multiplayer gaming becomes an even more integral part of the gaming experience. Now the real question is, was he predicting online multiplayer, in which case he's dead on, or he or she, I forget which the THQ person is. But if it's multiplayer online, they're definitely dead on, prophetic with that one. If it's local, still somewhat, there's still local multiplayer, some of us still play it. I see 2 of the 4 potential hardware manufacturers getting squeezed out. Unfortunately, just one. It was only Sega. It seems as if the current trend of acquisition / consolidation will continue until there will be 4 or 5 major publishers. I think there will be a clearer segmentation in gaming experience / game pricing, much like what is happening in the PC market, but affecting the console business. I think in general there will be fewer games, which will have longer legs and deliver an experience like no other. Okay, when we look back on 2000, 5 to 10 years from now, what things do you think we'll remember it for? 989 Studios, the Y2K non-event, having more hair back then. Y2K event and having more hair. Or non-event. Activision. They forgot to make Activision bold. With the advancements in technology, there will be many notable industry achievements in 2000. The launch of the PS2, which promises to further redefine the console market, will be one of the milestones to remember. Capcom and the amazing quality of our games. I'm only partially kidding. You'll probably remember it from the beginning, for the beginning of the integration of very high graphics capabilities with live actors and graphics. This is where you can't tell the difference between what is a real actor and what is CG. When you look at films like The Matrix and the possibilities that these new platforms will have, the possibilities are endless. Yeah, I think that was still a couple of generations off. EA, it's far too early to speculate. Thanks, EA. That's a quick answer. Namco. I expect that as the hype behind the millennium fades, the year 2000 will mostly be remembered as the 20th anniversary of Pac-Man. Still the best video game the world has ever seen. So do we remember the year 2000 as the 20th anniversary of Pac-Man? Maybe we should. Let's have like a Pac-Man day. Square. One thing for sure that people will remember about the year 2000 in the video game industry is that it was the year the game business took leaps and bounds to distinguish itself from the traditional toy business, which it has previously been categorized as. I believe the year 2000 will be noted for video games being recognized as a viable part of an entire home entertainment system. THQ. The first time we were really given a big blank canvas to work with and told to see what we could come up with. Yeah, that's pretty close. I mean, consoles, PS2, Gamecube, and Xbox don't seem very powerful by today's standards, but compared to what was capable on the PS1 and N64 in particular, like, these systems really did, open the door for something like, just look at Smuggler's Run, like a really big canvas. This game wouldn't have been possible on the PS1 or N64. I guess they had Body Harvest or something like that on the N64, but just from a sheer size and scope and everything going around, or Grand Theft Auto 3, to name one. And just thinking a little bit more about the THQ guys' answer, as where they're finally given a big blank canvas to work with. The PS2, Xbox, and GameCube era is pretty much where the last giant leaps in gameplay design and innovation happened, at least on the console front, but everything else has been kind of just a refinement from then. I mean, yes, there were some hardware constraints, but compared to PlayStation and N64, they were by far less. You could have giant games. You could have something the size of Morrowind on the Xbox. I mean, yeah, hardware constraints, but still, something huge like Morrowind, that's pretty much where this entire generation shaped pretty much what we're playing right now to this day. Giant sandbox games, huge open sprawling environments, giant worlds, there hasn't been a lot of change in since this generation. This is pretty much the final big breakthrough, as far as they finally had the technology to see, the final games that they had in their head for years that they couldn't do because the hardware wouldn't let them. Like I said, the big open sprawling worlds. Again, there's been refinements, but as far as design and aspects and the kinds of games that we play today, it pretty much broke through with the PS2, the GameCube, the Xbox, and the Dreamcast somewhat, but the Dreamcast didn't have a long enough life to really... it influenced that generation, but not on the same level as the PS2, or even the Xbox and some of the other ones. So, which console do you see as Sony's main competitor? Dreamcast, Dolphin, or Microsoft Xbox? At this point, we didn't know that the GameCube's name was the GameCube. It was still known as Project Dolphin, so... by Dolphin, they mean GameCube, in case you don't know. 989 Studios. I believe Dolphin will be the biggest threat to the PlayStation 2, but certainly Microsoft has to be taken seriously. Activision, we can't comment on this. Capcom, I would say it has to be Nintendo. The reason is simple. One word. Pokemon. Nintendo has done incredibly well with this product. Aside from that, Nintendo has excellent partners and a lot of experience coming through transition periods. EA, most likely Dolphin when it ships. Until then, probably Dreamcast. Namco, Sony hasn't reached number one by focusing on the competition. It's becoming number one by focusing its consumers. It's become number one by focusing its consumers. By focusing on its consumers? Okay. And I don't see Dreamcast, Dolphin, or Xbox or anything else changing that. Just look at the specs Sony chose for the PS2. They could have taken a short-term approach to profit and tried to make everyone buy multiple entertainment systems with separate DVD, movie player, and game console strategy. But they didn't. They really put the consumer first to provide the best in both technology and value by building both features into PlayStation 2. It's this type of long-term consumer-based strategy that has made Sony number one. Square. As I mentioned, any system which does not dominate the Japanese market will be US only hardware like the N64 is today. I see no chance of Dreamcast being dominant in Japan, nor do I see any chance of the Xbox becoming the leading console system in Japan. I still think the only console system which has a chance of challenging the PlayStation 2 is the Nintendo Dolphin. And yet the Xbox sold more than the Gamecube. Not a whole lot more. They're pretty much equal most of the time. THQ. If Microsoft in fact wants to get into the gaming console hardware business and wish to engage Sony in the battle for your living room, I view them as being the main competitor. Well, he was right about the next generation with the 360 and the PS3, that's for sure. So, THQ guy, you pretty much get them all right. Well, pretty much. Number 11. What do you think of Sony's vision of convergence for the PS2? Internet, DVD, e-distribution, etc. E-distribution didn't really happen to the next generation, but hey. And how will your company address this new world of entertainment? 989 Studios. Sony's vision is bold and intriguing with a high possibility to succeed. It's too soon to say how 989 Studios will address these changes. You won't. But we are going to see a new mindset on the part of our developers as they come to understand the interactive gaming implications of Sony's initiatives. Activision. Activision is excited about the possibilities the PS2 presents. Microprocessors now exist in more devices than ever before, which allows the industry to continue to increase its reach and market share. Well, in the future, it'd be microprocessors in cell phones, actually, but Capcom. We think there is definitely something there. Remember, no convergence to date has truly worked. It's an unproven model, but given the right conditions, this could be very successful. We will approach this very cautiously, but continue to work with Sony among other hardware makers. As I've said, Sony must be able to make everything work well. The market is very competitive and people find opportunity in any flaw. EA will evaluate what actually comes to market and respond accordingly. Guessing about 1. What new technology will actually become a reality, and 2. Whether consumers will embrace it are dangerous things. So, evaluating what new technologies will actually become reality and whether consumers will embrace it. Namco. Right now, the magic word is definitely convergence. But for Namco, what's really important is making the best games possible. Games are what Namco does best, and I happen to think that Namco's games are the best you'll ever find. I'm thrilled that I'll be able to surf the net or watch movies on my new game console, but what I want to do most is play games. As far as the new power of this PS2 technology is concerned, Shigeru Yokomiya, sorry, I probably slaughtered that, Namco's head of consumer products in Japan, explained it best. He pointed out that at the beginning period of PS2 development, hardware limitations have been taken out of the equation. Game developers all over the world have been given a blank slate and told, do whatever you want, this system can handle it. For the moment, the only limitations will be the imaginations and resources of the teams that create the games that I like. Or, the games. I like that. Square. It is nice to have a grand vision, but we have not seen how Sony is going to achieve that vision yet. I would like to wait and see how Sony is going to be implementing what they are now calling their e-distribution. Truth be told, they won't. At least not until PSN, but Microsoft would get there first with the e-distribution. And so would Steam and all the other ones too. THQ. It truly is gaming's holy grail. I am always leery when I hear this set-top box theory. We are not too far removed from a nation of people who could not program their VCR clock. I think this may still be a hardware generation away. Dang, THQ, man, you nailed it. But Sony has been able to deliver on everything they have said they would so far, so we'll see. The key will be how soon will the nation be wired for broadband, and will it cost the usability of the service to be and will it cost and usability of the service be as mass market appealing as cable TV? Will its cost? Will the cost? Holy cow, I can't even read. I'll try and reread that for you guys. I think this may still be a hardware generation away, but Sony has been able to deliver on everything they have said they would so far, so we'll see. The key will be how soon will the nation be wired for broadband, and will the cost and usability of the service be as mass market appealing as cable TV? So the THQ guy was like dead on this entire interview. Okay, and that's pretty much the end. Thanks to the many industry people we talked to, a lot of interesting information has been revealed about the future of the PlayStation and video games. The year 2000 is going to end up being a very exciting year when PlayStation 2 is released. We can't think of a more exciting time to be a gamer. Well, that was actually this was a really exciting time in gaming. PS2 was coming out. All of a sudden, I'm either from Canada or Minnesota. PS2 was coming out. Dreamcast was already out. PS1 and N64 were hitting their strides. This was definitely one of the best times in gaming, as far as I'm concerned, in my opinion. Chocobo Dungeon 2. So that was the interview, the PlayStation 2000. Hopefully I didn't slaughter it too badly with my horrible reading abilities. Fear Effect. That's a great game, by the way. So that's the interesting interview in the January 2000, issue 29 of PlayStation Magazine, or PSM, with Jin Kazama on the cover. Just one of the few things I felt like going through with y'all. But anyways, Road Rash Jailbreak. Still haven't picked that one up. Toomba 2, Own It, Gekaido. One of the two actual traditional beat-em-ups on the PlayStation, at least in America. Alright, so there you have it. An interview, the PlayStation 2000 interview from January 2000, issue 29 of PSM. Well, I guess I'll see you later, and 2D Gamer signing out.